My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing. So is this titled, You, One of God's Most Beautiful People? Is that the title of the work? Okay. You, One of God's Most Beautiful People by Avisis. You, who have always stood by my side, ever since that first day of my existence, you have been a stable point of light, warm, full of love. You, who create the most mesmerizing art, your canvases, artworks sprung from your hands of talent, with all your skillful proficiency, creating depictions of your beautiful mind, inexplicable and yet infinitely expressive, without a subject, full of meaning. You, who are the most reliable of cicerones, I'm not familiar with this word, admittedly. The adventures you have brought us on overweigh wind and waves. The locations and experiences you have blessed our journey together with, I shall forever be grateful for them. You who have always been the eye of the storm, a pillar where to cast my anchor, to have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. And despite us no longer being able to see or touch you, I'm convinced that no matter what will happen to you, shall always be by my side. No matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side. This is why we read things multiple times, y'all. I'm butchering this. I'm so sorry, Avi. Quietly walking, with an open heart, we will proceed to hike, and you will walk the road with us. I love you, my dearest grandfather. Yeah, heavy. That is misspelled with the hour that is supposed to be or as well. Able to see or touch you. See or touch you. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you all are always welcome to revise the things you send me if you see things that are wrong. You found the perfect emote. Yeah, it's very sweet. Very, very sad. Okay. Let me read it again and read it better this time. With the shark. You, one of God's most beautiful people. You who have always stood by my side. Ever since that very first day of my existence, you have been a stable point of light, warm, full of love. You who create the most mesmerizing art, your canvases, artwork sprung from your hands of talent with all your skillful proficiency, creating depictions of your beautiful mind. Inexplicable and yet infinitely expressive without a subject, full of meaning. Thank you, Raiders. We're in the middle of reading something, so I'm going to finish reading this. You who are the most reliable of cicerones. The adventures you have brought us on, overway, wind, and waves, the locations and experiences you have blessed our journey together with. I shall forever be grateful for them. You who have always been the eye of the storm, a pillar where to cast my anchor. To have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. And despite us no longer being able to see or touch you, I am convinced that no matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side. Quietly walking with an open heart, we will proceed to hike, and you will walk the road with us. I love you, my dearest grandfather. Welcome, Raiders. Welcome, Jane. How are you? How is stream? Glad to have you all here. My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus. We read poetry of published people and also our friends here in chat. We're reading a poem by the wonderful Avisis right now, who has just greeted you. So welcome. And we are doing a little bit of, analysis and just sort of sharing work and supporting each other as poets. How was your stream, Jane? Or you, if you were still around, I hope it was good. I hope you were doing well. With that, I suppose I will shout you out. This is important. Jane has a lovely channel. When I was in there today, it was a very productive but low-key stream. Yeah, Jane's streams are pretty awesome, and I'm in there a lot, and they are very cool, and a good, awesome member of our writing community here on Twitch. There you go. Did the shout out work? Did it go away? This is painful. But welcome in, everyone. My chats are going to the void, it appears, which is strange. It was a very productive but low-key stream. It is good to hear that. And if you need to, turn off Twitch, go take care of yourself, please do. I hope you have a wonderful... I'll be taking some after stream care time. I'm still actively lurking. Well, that I appreciate. And I'm still trying to get this thing to shout you out because there we go. You all go follow them. Their stream is beautiful and it's a good time. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have much more to say there. What was that word in the poem that I wasn't sure? Cicerone? An old term for a guide who conducts visitors and sightseers to museums and galleries and explains things. Cool. So that's the word you used. Yeah. Hold on. Cicerone is the what Wikipedia is telling me. Okay. Cicerones. Okay, that works. Back to your work. Pardon interruption. Thank you for joining, Jane, and your viewers. So, You, one of God's most beautiful people. By Avisis. And is there anything in particular? Do you feel there are things you want to improve about this? Or do you just want me to look over and kind of yap as I yap? I'm trying to slightly adjust some things. My ring light that's falling, my camera, so apologies. It's always a struggle. I need to have this all like locked in place. Is that straightish? Okay. But I'll start. You who have always stood by my side. Ever since that first day of my existence, you have been a stable point of light. Warm, full of love. You who create the most mesmerizing art, your canvases, artwork sprung from your hands of talent with all your skillful proficiency, creating depictions of your beautiful mind, inexplicable yet infinitely expressive, without subject, full of meaning. I think this is just like a beautiful description of like abstract art, which it sounds like you are describing, you know, what he makes, right? Or what he makes as abstract. Inexplicable, yet infinitely expressive. Without subject, full of meaning. That's very well said. I feel free to yap. I do not think I will rework this specific piece since it's been a couple of years and I wrote it right now. We're working on new things. It's always good to have takeaways on what I can improve. Sure thing. I understand that. Sorry, I need to stretch. How do I get this to be straight? I'm really struggling to have... Okay, there we go. Yeah. The adventures you have brought us on over way, wind, and waves. The locations and experiences you have blessed our journey together with. I shall forever be grateful for them. You who have always been the eye of the storm, a pillar where to cast my anchor, to have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. And despite us no longer being able to see or touch you, I'm convinced that no matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side, quietly walking with an open heart. Proceed to hike, and you'll walk on the road with us. I love you, my dearest grandfather. These are the kinds of poems that are the hardest for me to give feedback to, if I'm going to be honest. These poems are poems like this. Hello, sweet-voiced human. I have 5 minutes before I have to mom. Hello, soul. How are you? Glad to have you here, and yeah. I don't know what to say. Glad to have you here. Good to see you. How's October going for you? It's been a while since I've been in your stream. So these poems are really hard for me because, like, and these poems, I mean poems like this that are honest, that are very rooted in just like emotion and the things that are heartfelt, right? Because at the end of the day, what I'm reading is you just taking your emotions and really just like putting them flat on the table in front of me. Right? You are hitting me in the feels. And it's really hard to critique something that just does that. Right? You're in a weird mood? Well, I apologize, or I'm sorry to hear that. I don't have to apologize. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for inadvertently introducing me to this lovely stream. Oh right, you came in an Unknown Soul raid originally. Written on the day he passed, so it was all very raw. Yeah. And I tend to get kind of hung up and stuck on how to do this, because the writing in poems like this tends to be very simple. Right? Simple writing, because a poem like this isn't as much about the writing. It's not about how you write a poem like this. As weird as it sounds, you know, some writing doesn't need to stand out, I guess. And by that I mean writing that stands out tends to be writing that like catches your eye and says, wow, that was a beautiful turn of phrase. Beautiful turn of phrase, like this thing is pretty, and sorry, my brain is like kind of shutting off right now for some reason. Some writing doesn't need to stand out. Sometimes you don't need to have this work that puts beautiful words on the page. It just needs to say, honestly, what is happening. Now, granted, you do have some like beautifully put together words. I pointed out your description of abstract art, which okay. I did like how you pointed the thing with the abstract art, though. I'm not sure everyone would have picked up on it. Yeah, I think it's because I really, really love abstract, like, painting and visual art. Where'd all these people come from? Popping in, only have 10 minutes, wanted to say congrats on whoever's work June is looking at. Yeah, it's Avi's work. Hi, folks. Hi, Stylish Fail. How are you? And, yeah, lots of people. I just realized you're in the perfect stream right meow for Callie. Why is my stream perfect for Callie? Still working on your poem. Sorry to make you wait. Callie's a poet. Yeah. I read, actually the first thing I read today was from Callie. And he has a really nice voice too. I didn't know that. Thank you. I think most people have nice voices. So I guess that makes the question, Avi, like, what do you want me to look at in this poem? More helpful for something like this? I've been told I have radio voice. That's a good thing to have. But, because I don't know. Your voices are just so soft. My voice is soft because I made it soft. I can talk not soft. If I don't make myself, if I don't make myself talk soft, I will not talk soft. I told you I have radio face. You who are the most reliable of Cicerones, the adventures you have brought us on over way, wind, and waves, the locations and experiences you have blessed our journey together with. I shall forever be grateful for them. Jane, hello again. I want to say the same thing. I was told... Which one? I don't know which one you're applying to. It's hard for me to see. Like which message. Anyway. Looks like this is a not letter. At the first glance it looks like a letter, but there's more layers than just a thank you Gramps letter. What do you mean by that, Brian? Y'all's help would be helpful here. I don't particularly know. I mean, if anything, it's a step for me to start sharing this story. Oh, for sure. Sorry, the dogs are barking. It's a step for you to be sharing. Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, I encourage you to keep sharing. Oh, that is a bad day. Very good. Oh, I see. So you're saying that this is sort of a poem that reads like a letter. Interesting. I definitely... You did leave it on the casket at the funeral, so as a close letter, so as close a letter as it could be at the time. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So that's beautiful. Like, you all see the predicament, right? How something like this is extraordinarily difficult to, one, analyze, because there's not so much to pull out of this, in my opinion. Like, you do use some metaphor very well. Inexplicable and infinitely expressive without a subject full of meaning, to talk about abstract art and the art he makes. But yeah, I can't analyze someone's heart. Oh yeah, for reference, this was also in Swedish and translated for this purpose. Well, thanks for taking the time to translate it. And I mean, like, Eye of the Storm, Pillar to Cast My Anchor, Stable Point. You make it really clear in your metaphors that how important this person is to you. Like, I have no doubt that your dearest grandfather, one of God's most beautiful people, gave you so much overwhelming comfort in life. Right? To have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. So, I don't know. And with that skim and comment, I now must pack up and head out. Have a good one, Brian. Have a good one. I don't understand. You want to go grab a beer? No, bars. It's saying like it's good words. If you heard really good rapping, like music, you would say bars, right? Avisis, if you've never had There's Lotus look at your work, just know that the last 1/3 that it's humble and thoughtful. That sounded cooler in my head. I thought it was so cute. Confusing it with how it goes from us. Yeah, so that caught me at first, I will say. So that's something we can talk about. There's something we can talk about, the us to you. Because anything in a poem that makes you stumble a bit can make the poem less effective. Boom, teaching tool. So stumbling is not something that feels very good as a reader to do in any work. if I read something and then I'm like, oh wait, what did that mean? And then I have to go back in the text. I can see those lines. If I'm like reading, and all is well, all is green, and then something seems a little confusing, I might keep going and then just end up having like no idea where I am and stopping and getting confused. This is not a pleasurable and enjoyable experience as a reader, because this means I have to circle back. I usually don't know where I started to get confused, and then I go pretty far back and have to read again. I kind of did that in initially reading your poem, right? So, time to mom. Enjoy being a mom. Moms are great. Thank you to my mom. Good on you. For caring for your kin. Anyway. Thanks. So stumbling can be a difficult thing, and these are things, stumbling usually just happens because you have like grammar issues or things that are like unclear, or confusing, which is sort of unclear, just anything that, or even just like mistakes, right? Or contradictions. Sometimes we like having contradiction in our work, and it can be a good kind of stumbling where they have to go back and say like, wait, this doesn't align with what we said before. But generally, if I stumble and I have to reread, it's not going to be a great experience. So, and yeah, let's do this. You who have always stood by my side. Oh, let's use the highlighter. I like the highlighter. I don't use it enough. Stood by my side. Day of my existence and a stable point of life. You who create the most mesmerizing art, your canvases, sprung from talent, etc., etc., etc. None of this mentions you anything. You who are the most reliable of chicharrones, the adventures you have brought us on. So, I mean, this is pretty clear, right? They're not just... he's not just bringing you on adventures. There's probably some other, like, grandkids or whatever, or relatives, all of that, right? Over way, wind, and waves, locations, experience you have blessed our journey with together. I shall forever be grateful for them. Like, that's not a problem. This works fine. Because you can't speak for your other kin who have experienced this. You who have always been the eye of the storm. A pillar where to cast my anchor. Cast my anchor. My side. It's the best gift that could ever be given. Despite us, this is the one that got me. Us no longer being able to see or touch you. I am convinced that no matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side. We will proceed to hike with you and walk the road along with us. So, I think the main issue here, if I had to guess from like a grammatical standpoint, is that this is one sentence. Right, that's a comma, which means this is all one sentence. And you are using a whole bunch of different people. Pronouns that are kind of unspecified. Pronouns can get confusing. Us, my, etc. So, use in the same sentence, to have you by my side, and then followed by a comma, and despite us, I am convinced that no matter what will happen to you, will always be by my side, which just makes that confusing. You could break it up. You could mention who us is, specifically by name. You could say the living, whatever. Or I don't see a reason why this couldn't just be me. If you are not able to see, thank you for the blessings. If you are not able to see and touch your grandfather, it's, implied that the same goes for us and everyone else. Like, it's something that's not a unique experience to you, I guess, in death. So saying me doesn't really serve any difference from saying us, if that makes sense. You might say my no longer being able to see, despite me. Doesn't really matter. I mean, one is probably more grammatical. But yeah, I didn't like the us, admittedly, from like a purely grammatical standpoint. It's interpretable. Your grandfather knew what you meant, right? No doubt. It's not something that destroys the functionality of the sentence. It is just a grammatical sort of faux pas. I think it felt more encompassing. If it was only me, it could be like him going away instead of actually being gone in a manner. Okay, like him not being present with you. Yeah, maybe. But I think no longer as a statement toward just like the future when we're talking about things like forever and like when we talk about how you will forever be grateful for him, we're talking about like great spans of time. And you've always been the eye, the pillar, the greatest gift you could have given, right? Him giving gifts is in the past. So I don't think no longer like sort of grammatically implies a temporary thing. So for me, it is fine to say that like, yeah, me doesn't really exclude everyone. Like, it doesn't make or break it. I think either way it's fine, right? And yeah, like he knows what you meant. Everyone knows what you mean. It's just a nitpick at that point, so it's whatever, right? We will proceed to hike, and you will walk the road with us. I do like this line for a couple of reasons. Because we are hiking. Hiking implies a certain amount of effort, right? And it differentiates the way that he is walking the road, as to say, yes, we are hiking, we are still trudging, potentially struggling through life, and he is just there alongside, always, in a sense, a feeling of lightness and ease, which I think really communicates that you see that there is still like presence and his joy there in death. So this last line, I think, is the way you say that is pretty wonderful from my interpretation, right? But yeah, it's a beautiful poem. The adventures you have brought us on, over way, wind, waves, locations, experiences you have blessed our journey with. Yeah, and I mean, like, I would say locations, experiences are maybe, if I'm critiquing, if you want pure, like, literary critique, these aren't the most exciting words, right? We're talking about adventures, way, wind, and waves. The locations, well, maybe the landscapes, maybe the maybe experiences can be something else, right? or make specific reference, but you're not changing this, right? It's just something to note. I feel like I challenge the type of things you're typically looking at with both things I've sent in now. Yeah, you definitely do, which is good practice for me. It is. And I like to say, and I encourage you all as you go out and maybe if you read someone else's work and try to do similar in critique, which if any one of you went out and actually treated another poem like this and read through it for like a friend, I've succeeded at life. But one of my rules generally for myself is that I try not to critique the ideas of the person, because if they wrote about it, it's valuable enough, it's important enough that I should not be saying, well, don't write about this. Like, that is utter nonsense. For me to say, write about something else, right? So that leaves me to critique other things. To critique the writing, which of course means, all the things within it, the style, the grammar, which I don't really like, critiquing, the actual, how well it communicates the idea, right? I'm critiquing the communication, but not the idea itself, because that would just be messed up in my eyes. And of course, some poems are more about the idea. And no matter how much of this I critique, it's just not the point. And in some sense, the more stylistic this poem becomes, the more complex, the more technical, more style can be bad for a poem that cares most about its idea. Of course, grammar is important. And most of the time, if you're really writing a simple poem about an idea, you're already communicating it well, because it means these deep, important things to you. Which makes my critique very difficult. Communication, that's something for me that I have trouble with. I don't really know the middle ground of style and communication. Yeah. And it also depends on if you want to be in that middle ground. Avi, in this poem, I do not think wants to be in the middle ground. Avi writes about the idea and isn't thinking about style and communication. It's all communication. And that's wonderful. You, in what we read, it was all style, right? And it was good style. It was a beautiful poem. But it sounds like you want more communication, and that's fine, right? You should, perhaps. Because I do see the point of the poem underlying as doing some amount of this, and you do some amount of that. You didn't just write pretty words. You wrote a good poem that said something very powerful about all the stuff we talked about earlier, right? But I would say communication, there's an amount of directness that is very much related to how we communicate. The more direct you are, the easier, more directness is going to give a much easier time interpreting. But style tends to be this sort of indirect thing, where we care about the words and how they sound. And sometimes we take very circuitous routes with our word choice because it sounds better. Because this can sound really good. But of course, the further we go, the more we're going to lose some of our easy interpretation. And yeah, you say you struggle to find the balance. I mean, I don't think I can give advice on that, other than reading your work and telling you, did this communicate or not? Because the balance that you want is personal to you. What I wrote the other night has more style. There's some other day, maybe we can look at that. Yeah, another day. So, because sometimes you need a good rhyme here. I need to rhyme something perfectly. And all of the rhymes aren't things that just directly say the thing. Because, it's just not how it works. There's not always a perfect rhyme for everything if we're trying to be direct. And then, maybe, we have a metaphor, because metaphors are very stylistic and beautiful. But metaphors are fundamentally indirect, right? And maybe we try to communicate something purely through our formatting. When the formatting itself of your poem communicates something, that's really cool. But that's also an indirect way of communication, because you're not just saying the words. You're not saying I love you. You're formatting your poem like I love you. It's possible, I would say. And so maybe one might say an ideal world, and I don't even know if this is true, is writing a poem that has as much style as possible while still maintaining a requisite level of directness. But again, what is direct enough? What is stylistic enough? What is stylistic? What is enjoyable? What is a good rhyme? I don't know. Maybe I know. I know when I write it. There's an interesting thing where sometimes you'll write something down and you'll be like, wow, that rhyme sounds good. But that one just sounds bad. And it doesn't work for me. There's some amount of artistic instinct, I guess, which makes up style, right? To say why does it sound good? Because it sounds good to me. Sometimes it's just this weird pre-cognitive aesthetic decision. As in, we decide the quality before we actually process it. And I think this is why a lot of times people say that having your own personal style, we talked about this the other day, is not a conscious choice. Some people will say that. They'll say style is just the way that you decide what is good enough to put on the page. And I can write, let's say Penguino Man, a horror poem, a scary poem. Maybe that's not the style. Maybe it is my style imposed upon horror. And the way that I specifically write horror will always reflect my style. This is me going completely backwards from a previous stream where I said that I think style is an intentional thing, where I can change my writing to be horror and write a very specific way and use imagery and fear and grasp people. Or, we might say, no matter what, style is a higher level thing. And if I'm writing horror, or I'm writing romance, or I'm writing something very magical and abstract, style is merely the through line of my perception of quality that is superimposed onto all of these things. I know I said a lot of big words there, but that might be a better interpretation of style. Oh, I actually think that interconnectedness is really what helps with communication. Symbols mean something, and if different symbols come together in the right way, they can say one thing. True. Because using a metaphor that communicates love might not be enough on its own, right? But if I do other things, if I have other bits of style, maybe, that come together, they can work together and have like a positive synergistic effect, right? That's where the writer's style and literary genres come into play. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It almost sounds like you're gatekeeping having a good style by saying that it is something instinctual. Maybe I am. Let me explain. I'm not trying to gatekeep. There's a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Also, I'm not necessarily saying these are my beliefs. These are like hypotheses. Motorcycle maintenance. By Robert Pirsig. This is, I would say, the most well-known modern book of philosophy in like the kind of, I don't know, like it's the most, this is kind of pop philosophy, like the first instance. So it's a little heavier than like some stuff you would get in like, I don't know, who's that author that wrote like Outliers? I don't know. But Pirsig writes about quality. Be right back driving home. Enjoy your drive. He writes about quality. And he's not using quality as a term to say that something is inherently, maybe this is where we're getting caught up, inherently good or bad. Quality is something that a person for themselves feels. When I look at a painting on the wall, right, and I see it, and it's this beautiful painting, let's say by Van Gogh, right, and I see it on the wall, and my personal, like, initial perception of this painting is this is good, or this is bad. That's kind of what I mean by like personal style. And what I decide is good from my instinct, from my Van Gogh. Sorry. But look at my Starry Night. It's beautiful. my style is simply when I put something on the page, before I go and analyze, almost, before I go in and like analyze my own work, something about writing a sentence. You make art, write a poem down, and you will look at it and you'll be able to say, I like this poem or I don't. Right? And I'm saying that is your style, if that makes sense. Because everyone, both G's pronounced like you said the last. Oh, Van Gogh. Oh, okay. I got you. Van Gogh. Like that. Kind of. Close enough. Where you're, so basically I write something down on the page, I know if it's good or bad as my writing, and other people will disagree fundamentally when they read a sentence. Is it good, is it bad? That's not to say that one person is right. There's not good style and there's not bad style. There's not good quality and there's not bad quality, kind of, in this, at least not inherently, in this description. And so it's not that I'm gatekeeping having a good style by saying that it's something instinctual. I'm saying that your style maybe, potentially, is instinctual. The way you write something as horror, as romance, based on your own value in art and your own lived experience, changes, and that might be out of our control. And your style, it's possible, might lend itself well to horror in that it ends up good. It might lend itself to something more magical or something romantic because of the conventions of that genre. If the convention of the horror genre is to describe things very specifically, to grab your viewer or your reader and scare them and make them feel like they're part of the story, if you do that well, if that is something you like inherently, maybe instinctually, in writing, yes, you might be a better horror writer. But also, someone who doesn't like that in their own writing can still capture those feelings. It's just a matter of putting in that work. And maybe one should argue that you should be in absolute control, master your own style, and be able to write something down and not just look at it as, does this feel right to me, but in what settings can I use this? Where will these words be applicable? And maybe how can I turn these words that I don't like into my style? I have trouble writing comedy or romance because my style is better with fantasy and the gothic genre, but I can learn style. Exactly. And yeah, that's some ideas, right? So this book kind of talks about those things. I recommend it. One of my favorite teachers ever talked about it a lot. Dr. Astol, if you're ever here. My life will be complete if Kirk Astol is in my Twitch chat. I've been bumping the ads back for 15 minutes now, using all of my things to push them back because I wanted to explain all of that. But I'm gonna run a self-care ad break. None of you are gonna watch the ad. You're gonna stand up and care for yourself, and then we'll come back and maybe try to tie some of those things back into this poem because we've veered far away, as we tend to do. Ad is running. Maybe. That's my stretching stick. Excellent stick. Good stick. The ad's done. Sounds like the ads are done. Okay. Another thing, dogs are wilding. Yeah, they tend to. They like rile each other up. I guess another word maybe for style is like one's own preference. Or just like, I don't know, the way you write. They're jealous of my stick. Let's not take that one the wrong way. So back to this. If we were to talk about this poem in terms of those things, get a 4-hour nap. Nice. If we were to talk about this poem and talk about like its style, we're basically saying that, I mean, earlier Brian Lowe said that this kind of follows the convention of a letter, right? And that would be almost the genre of this poem. And then your style is how you interpret this kind of thing. A poem that talks to your passed away grandfather. That's like the genre, the description of what we're writing. And our style is your own personal decisions on how we get from that idea to a beautiful poem. Right? So we start with a letter, but then like, if that's what it is, or just communication, and then we start with an address. You, one of God's most beautiful people. And there are certain aesthetic choices in this line. One of God's most beautiful people. Some people would not be able to write that line based on their lived experience and their style, because that is not an aesthetically good line to them because they're not religious, right? But that is a reflection of your values and your values in writing and what you think is like valid to write. And then moving on. you who have always stood. Some people would say, this repetition is kind of cringe. I don't think it is. But some people might not like that, or they would write that themselves. You, one of God's most beautiful people. And if they went to start the next line and write you, they'd cross it out, because they'd be like, I don't like that repetition. That is probably not something that you consciously knew you liked, but you wrote it because it felt right. You're kind of cringe. No, you're not. Maybe you are cringe in real life, and that's okay. Kill the part of us that cringes. To cringe is to be free. Exactly. That's also a thing. Like, judging other people's style, that's why I don't like doing it. Because it's something that is there. It is based on your existence and your preference and your ideas. And to say that that's not good is like an infringement upon you. My nickname has been Cringe Grill for over a decade. You've embraced it. Good. Ever since that very first day, some people will be like, that's I don't feel like that is something that I would write. Someone might say that. Some people would just write naturally ever since that first day of my existence, or ever since my existence from the first day, ever since the beginning, ever since the genesis of my existence. There are an infinite number of ways to say, since the point where my life started. That's another way to say it. And your style is you deciding to write it down like this. You've been stable, point of light, warm, full of love. And the only issue, really, or one issue, is when style is incompatible or just clashes with convention. Sometimes this is good, sometimes this is bad. If your style is different from convention, sometimes that's a new twist. Sometimes it's too far away where it doesn't feel right, or it's uncanny, or like let's say you were a comedian and you wrote a letter to your grandfather after his passing, and you wrote something that was cracking jokes and very funny. Just because it's not the normal style of sort of a eulogistic piece doesn't mean it's bad, but it clashes with convention, and that's what makes it unique, right? I feel that repetition would be a great tool here. When I wrote and studied prose poetry, repetition was a great way to apply the use of patterns, which the brain loves. True. Like, something about prose is just straight up prose might not say, like, you. I mean, you do. Actually, you do it at the start of every line. And that makes it feel less like prose, which is good, right? So yeah, good point. Repetition and any of these generally like poetic tools tend to just pull us further away from being prose. Convention, style. If you used a repetition like this in something that was prose and a novel, the brain might not love it because it's not conventional. It just depends. You have been a stable point of light, warm, full of love. These are sentence fragments, and I adore them. I adore the way these are used. Warm, period. It's not a sentence. It's not grammatical, but it emphasizes warm. Some people could not bring themselves to write like that, and that's just their choice. You, who create the most mesmerizing art. Your canvases, artwork sprung from your hands of talent. Like hands of talent. I personally maybe would have written it as from your talented hands. That's probably how I would have written it down if I was writing. If I had to guess. That doesn't make it better than yours, right? Hands of talent is cool. With all your skillful proficiency, creating depictions of your beautiful mind. The grammatical reader, skillful proficiency is sort of redundant. Skill and proficient. They're synonyms. Someone who's strictly talking about grammar might say, that's wrong, because you basically said the same word twice and you didn't need to do that. But also there's a beauty in that line too. With all your proficiency creating depictions of your beautiful mind, or all your skillful proficiency of creating depictions of your beautiful mind. They sound different, they feel different. And that's a good thing about poetry. We don't need to care about grammar. Inexplicable. That's also why people who really like grammar probably struggle with poetry. Inexplicable, yet infinitely expressive, without a subject full of meaning. This resonated with me, because it probably aligns with my style, and I probably would describe abstract art in a similar way, right? And when your style aligns with my style, that is probably where I get a particular resonance, right? With something you wrote. I might write this in the same way. Also, though, if you write something dramatically different from how I would write it, I can also find that beautiful and appreciate it because of the difference. Oftentimes I tell people, this is beautiful because I know it is something I could never write. And that is a point of value as a reader too, to read something that you could not create yourself. And the blending, noticing that you can say some things in some way, we can say them similarly, that's the beauty, right? Think I've heard you say that before. Gotcha. The I couldn't write this. And that's a style thing. I couldn't write. Why couldn't I write it? Because I don't find it aesthetic when I am behind the pen. And that's okay, because I can also find something aesthetically pleasing as a reader, but not as a writer. And I think that's something that maybe people don't realize. I wouldn't write it that way is not a comment of derision toward you. I wouldn't write it that way is a comment on how our style differs. And also probably with an undertone, at least from me, as that's a beautiful thing, right? So moving on. You, who are one of the most reliable chicharrones. I wasn't familiar with this word, and that's because my life experience hadn't given it to me enough in language, in literature, in poems, in reading, to use it. That's part of style too, your vocabulary. The adventures. I like the word adventure a lot. Adventure is one of my favorite words, which I say all the time. Something is one of my favorite words. I say that so much. But adventure is one of my favorite words. And that is definitely it sticks out to me. Because my dad talks about turning something into adventure, going on adventures, right? And that makes me love this word, and it makes me resonate in a sense with you and your experience with your grandpa, because it sounds similar to me and my experience with my dad, and maybe he got that from his. Who knows, right? Relation, it's a beautiful thing. You have brought us on over way, wind, and waves. Alliteration. Some people don't write it, despise it. Some people like it. Again, the locations and experience. I said before, when I kind of started this whole style talk, you could use different words there. You could use more descriptive words there, but that probably didn't feel necessary to you, or it felt natural to just say locations and experiences because there are so many that it encompasses everything. And there's a beauty in describing it like that too. And so that's a stylistic choice and not one that you may be made consciously. You have blessed our journey together with. I shall forever be grateful for them. You who have always been the eye of the storm. Chicharrones actually means fried pork belly in Spanish. Cicero, I'm not sure. See, I looked it up and it said on the website, on Wikipedia, the pronunciation of cicerons, as you say it, was chicharrone, like Spanish, fried pork belly. And it was like but I'm not sure. I also am pretty rusty on the International Phonetic Alphabet, but it did say chi. Here, let me look. Take a pause from. I've been like kind of on fire with okay. Chicharroni. Chi or cha is the T in that. Cha, and then schwa is ro, ro, or that's actually a diphthong, the ou. And then ni, lowercase I, is en. And then, but this is an alternate phonetic thing. Oh wait, maybe? Yeah, so that would be cissa. So it looks like you can do cicerone or chicharroni. This is linguistic stuff. This is really fascinating. If y'all have never like looked into the IPA, Wikipedia is a great place to learn about the phonetic alphabet and all this stuff. Anyway, you who have always been the eye of the storm. This is a fairly like common metaphor, and some people are like, oh, I don't want to use that like common or idiom, right? It's an idiom. Some people don't like using idiomatic phrases in their stuff, so they don't. I like it here. It's common, so we know it. When I first heard you say it, I assumed you first meant chiche was the Italian pronunciation or something. A pillar were to cast my anchor. Again, like any metaphor you use is a stylistic choice, and maybe not one you've made, because I'm going through and you're probably like, well, I didn't decide to write it that way. But you did. Maybe that's what style means. Maybe it's not. To have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. And despite us, again, you use us, and you're fine with it. I think us had me stumble. Yeah, sailor. Okay, with a sailor. Yeah, you definitely have like the nautical through line, which I did notice. And yeah, that's context, which is style. But you used us, and I stumbled over it, and you might not stumble over it, right? And if it didn't cause you to stumble, but it caused me to stumble, that's a disagreement of style, and that's one that might be a problem. It might not be. It really depends. Because like I stumbled, but I was able to figure out what it meant. No longer being able to see or touch you, I'm convinced that no matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side. Quietly walking with an open heart. We will proceed to hike, and you will walk the road with us, right? I love you, my dearest grandfather. So, sorry, I totally like just tore through that poem talking about style, but I think that goes to show that everything in our writing oozes with our own personality. Writing is a reflection of a person. And personality right? And sometimes it also describes real people. And that's why there's so much beauty in it, and that's why it's communicative, and that's why I love it. And that's also why it's hard to critique anything at all, which is why I tend toward starting off with a lot of interpretation. And my best advice, I feel like, comes from interpreting something, interpreting it differently than the author might expect, and then saying, well, here's how you can do a better job of finding your own voice. However, in a poem that needs no interpretation, then what is there for me to do? Because you have said something, you have made it clear in interpretation, and at that point, I have no right to step in. Maybe. So, maybe all of that comes back to what I was saying at the start. Or it definitely does, that these poems are hard to analyze. These poems, as in the ones that are the most honest, the most direct, and with that pure feeling and message. Because I don't have any work to do. And, I mean, poems are... I think every poem is already perfect in a sense, in that someone put their thoughts and themselves on a page, and people are perfect and beautiful in their existence. Might be hard to analyze, but we still managed to speak about at great length. And it took me a bit to figure out where to start, but yeah, and that's fun. Not only is poetry a object of communication, it is also a vessel and a means for additional discussion and communication. And the fact that you've shared this, and essentially by sharing it facilitated such a wonderful conversation, is an amazing thing that I thank you for, right? And I think, I don't know, it's a good poem, and I bet your grandpa likes it a lot. If no one has any other questions or comments on it, he does. Not to speak for him, but I'd put money on it. If there are no other questions, I'm going to read this one more time, and then definitely does. And then we'll see what we do after that. Sound good? Okay. Aww, making you tear up. It's my job. This is the feelings Twitch channel. And I'm going to read it one more time for you. If that's probably not going to help with the tearing up. You, one of God's most beautiful people. You who have always stood by my side. Ever since that very first day of my existence, you have been a stable point of light. Warm, full of love. You who create the most mesmerizing art, your canvases, artworks sprung from your hands of talent with all your skillful proficiency, creating depictions of your beautiful mind, inexplicable and yet infinitely expressive without a subject, full of meaning. You, who are the most reliable of cicerones, the adventures you have brought us on over way, wind, and waves, the locations and experiences you have blessed our journey together with. I shall forever be grateful for them. You who have always been the eye of the storm, a pillar where to cast my anchor. To have you by my side is the greatest gift that could ever be given. And despite us no longer being able to see or touch you, I am convinced that no matter what will happen, you shall always be by my side, quietly walking with an open heart. We'll proceed to hike, and you will walk the road with us. I love you, my dearest grandfather. You, one of God's most beautiful people, by Avisis. Thank you so much for sharing this. One of God's most beautiful poems. And I only say that because I think they're all beautiful. Thank you. It was a good one. It was a good discussion with it. And yeah, wow. Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.